left. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joanna Karmowska. I'm a trustee for EUROPA Nostra UK, and I will have pleasure to host today's event. The webinar has been organized by EUROPA Nostra UK, which is a national representation of the Pan-European Federation EUROPA Nostra. Our main aim is to safeguard Europe's cultural and natural heritage. You will find a link to our website in the chat when Oli puts the link. And if you don't know us, please spare a moment and have a look. And if you feel that our cause is close to your heart, please join us. Tonight, we are delighted to bring you the 10th webinar in our series of webinars showcasing recent European Heritage Award winners. And you can find recordings of the previous webinars on our website under News. And the European Heritage Awards, EUROPA Nostra Awards, were launched in 2002 by the European Commission and have been run by EUROPA Nostra ever since. A big welcome to our members and their friends and everybody else who has joined us today. The talk will be about 30-40 minutes long, I trust, and it will be followed by a Q&A session. The chat is open, so please feel free to use it for exchanging comments or writing questions. And if you prefer, I can ask them on your behalf after the talk. I may try to group them into some reasonable flow. And the session is recorded, as you probably see, because we would like to post the recording for those who couldn't join us today. I'm joined today also by my co-trustee, Oli Dan, who has kindly set up this event and will run it behind the scene. We are very privileged to have with us today two presenters. Oh, great. Now I lost it. Yes, okay, it's better. From the National Trust, who have been part of the 24-year journey to conserve the Gideon Tapestries at Hardwick Hall. Elaine Owers, textile conservator. She specializes in tapestry conservation, and Elaine has managed various large-scale conservation projects, including several of the Gideon Tapestries from Hardwick Hall and 2 sets of 17th century tapestries nailed to the walls of Doddington Hall. Elaine is currently managing the conservation of a Ulysses tapestry from Hardwick Hall. Rachel Langley, Senior Textile Conservator. Rachel has worked at the National Trust Textile Conservation Center for over 30 years, specializing in tapestry conservation. Over her career, Rachel led a large-scale project, including several of the Gideon Tapestries. Let me now leave you with Elaine and Rachel for a fascinating journey through conservation of the Gideon Tapestries. And Elaine and Rachel, the floor of the screen is now yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
When you start talking, I'm just going to go and get a couple of paracetamol. Is that all right? Once you're in.
So we're just sharing on screen with you.
It's going very well. Oh, it's going perfect. This is perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully
Well
you can see everything.
Yes, absolutely perfectly.
Okay, so thank you for inviting us to talk to you today. And just to say that we're extremely proud to be celebrating our EUROPA Nostra Award. And we're speaking to you this evening from the National Trust Textile Conservation Studio in Norfolk. So you can get a glimpse of it over our shoulders. So the rehanging of the last Gideon tapestry in July 2023 marked the end of the longest textile conservation project in the National Trust's 130-year history. My name is Elaine Owers, and I've worked on 5 of the largest Gideon tapestries. From tapestry conservation intern to project manager, I'm proud to say that you can follow my career as you walk along the West Wall. Conservation of the colossal 13 tapestries took 24 years and £1.7 million to complete. At 6 metres in height and just over 70 metres in length, the set covers an astonishing 430 metres square. This paper will look at the methodology, how it was adapted over 24 years, and the discoveries made before summarising the legacy of the project. The Gideon Tapestries are a set of 13 tapestries commissioned by Sir Christopher Hatton and woven in Belgium in 1578. The set depicts the biblical story of Gideon from the Old Testament book of Judges, in which Gideon leads an army to save his people from the Midianites. Bess of Hardwick bought the set from the nephew and heir of Sir Christopher Hatton in 1592 at a cost of £326 and 6 shillings, from which £5 was deducted because Bess had to change the Hatton arms to her own. They have hung in the Long Gallery at Hardwick since this time. In 1996, a survey was commissioned of all 13 tapestries. The resulting report by Danielle Bosworth provided the basis by which treatment commenced in 1999. To reduce the time required to treat the whole set, work was initially shared between 2 studios, Danielle's studio and the National Trust Textile Conservation Studio. The last piece was rehung in 2023. Due to their huge scale, the tapestries are woven in 3 pieces. So they actually have what we call the main field, which is the main image in the tapestry. And then there's the lower border and the top border, and they are stitched together after weaving. They're independent pieces. We were able to use this to our advantage, treating each component separately. Each tapestry was carefully removed from the wall, documented, photographed, previous linings and repairs removed, surface cleaned and wet cleaned before conservation stitching through a full support of linen, relined and reinstalled using Velcro. So to add some background, what is a tapestry and how is it made? A tapestry is a woven textile created by passing coloured silk and wool yarns, the weft, over and under alternate undyed yarns, the warp. The weft is beaten down with a comb to completely cover the warp, and it is the weft that creates the image. So to secure the woven structure, the tapestry is sewn to a linen backing through which the stitch repairs are made. So missing warp and weft results in a hole over which we place new wool warps to secure the structure. And over the new wool warps that are inserted, we work a spaced stitching that we call brick couching, which is worked in the coloured threads, which takes place of the missing weft and recreates the design. And here you can see Rachel working at a tapestry frame. It's a 3-roller frame. It allows the conservator to work in small sections, applying the linen support as they roll through the tapestry. You're actually working with a hand on top and a hand underneath, passing the yarn between the layers. So taking us back to the beginning of the project, the challenge was to establish a methodology of conservation initially, which began with the materials to be used. Stranded cottons were used for missing or degraded silk, which were chosen for their strength and the range of colours available. Wool yarn was dyed at the studio using Lanoset dyes, where colours were not available commercially. Stitch spacing was agreed, closer in dark wool outlines for intensity of colour and clarity of design. And slits were stitched with Gutermann polyester thread. To manage costs, we ordered materials in bulk at the project's outset, which included purchasing enough linen scrim as a support fabric for half of the 430 metre squared of tapestry. Dye and fleece analysis was undertaken to reveal information about the tapestry's production. Originally woven with a vivid range of colours, including purples and pinks. These have now faded to more muted shades. Small samples of long weft ends on the reverse were sent for dye and yarn analysis in 2003. The dye analysis confirmed 3 main dyes, woad, weld, and orchel, being used individually or in combination for a wide range of colours and shades. Madder, Brazil wood, and tannin-based dye were also found, but the range of dyes is notably very small. Some of the more faded purples, especially noticeable in the night sky scene of Gideon entering the Midianite camp as a spy, is thought to have been obtained from a range of different lichen, which fade more rapidly than most usual dyes. Hence the rapid colour change that we have in the Gideon tapestries. So wool samples were analysed to establish the fleece type. Given the limited comparison of yarns available at the time, it was concluded that the hairy medium fleeces in the Gideon tapestry were not typical of Flanders and may have been imported from the neighbouring Netherlands, where native heath breeds would have had fleeces of this quality. So weavers' marks, or woven signatures, if you like, in the tapestry have identified the set as being woven in 2 places in Belgium, Oudenaarde and Gramont. In total, 3 weavers' marks have been found across the set. Firstly, you have the silk 6-pointed star, which is the Star of Oudenaarde, found in the right corner of 2 tapestries. And the discovery of a second weaver's mark, the stepped cross, placed Gideon choosing his army from Gramont, indicating that 2 weaving workshops were working together to produce the set. Dye analysis was carried out again in 2017 by the KIK Textile Laboratories in Brussels. The results were consistent with the previous analysis. Once again, the lichen dyes for shades of pink, lilac, and black were noted and typical of tapestries produced in Oudenaarde. This could indicate that the dyeing for this tapestry was done in Oudenaarde, as the towels were only separated by 16 miles, or that the 2 cities had similar dye traditions. A third mark, a winged bobbin, was found on a tapestry patch in a top border galloon. The patch matches the weave structure and warp count of the Gideon set, and therefore it is likely that it is original, especially as there are missing areas of galloon on other tapestries in the set, but this mark has yet to be identified. A CH monogram for Sir Christopher Hatton has been found embroidered through the original lining in many of the upper corners of the main fields and top borders. And these are worked in a running stitch in a linen thread, and the stitches extend to the front, although in places they're now barely visible. More unusually, one of the tapestries has a CH monogram which is woven in blue and cream on the galloon of the lower border. There are also embroidered scrolls which are worked in the same linen thread through the original lining, mostly in the corners of the lower borders. But in all cases, the original lining has been cut around the embroidery during conservation, and a viewing window has been created in the support scrim, the support linen scrim. So throughout the tapestry, there are painted outlines, predominantly around areas of foliage and the fleur-de-lis design, as you can see in the top left there. Senior Curator of Historic Textiles at the National Trust Museums of Scotland, Helen Wilde, concluded in her research that the painted outlines were consistent with the date of manufacture, given the uniform nature of the painted outlines across the set. Painted details also feature from Bess's time in the form of shields painted on fabric and applied over the top of the Sir Christopher Hatton woven shields to personalise them as her own. The coarse plain weave fabric has a linen warp and a woolen weft, with a thick nap present on both sides of the fabric, known by the term linsey-woolsey. The hat and does surmounting the shields were all altered to become Hardwick stags by overpainting directly onto the tapestry with antlers and blue collars studded with 3 eglantine. The Gideon Tapestries are blackened by years of exposure to coal dust from fires and the local coal mining, and removing the acidic dirt was critical to their stabilisation. Ksenia Marco, studio manager at the time, researched methods, selecting the aerosol suction cleaning technique pioneered at De Witt in Belgium. So the tapestry is laid on a perforated platform, allowing an aerosol of compressed air, water, and detergent to be drawn through the tapestry by means of suction from below. This method performs both the cleaning and the rinsing, while the suction completes the drying. The tapestry remains immobilized during the process, reducing the risk of shrinkage and dye bleed. As the soiling is drawn away from below, it cannot resettle and fix to the fibres. So the first tapestries were sent to De Witt in the year 2000, and since then the process has been adapted and refined as each tapestry has gone out for cleaning. As a rule, soft brushes are used as the mechanical action helps to lift the carbon soiling away from the surface. And a drain pipe roller enables the tapestry to be turned over so that the reverse can be washed and gently brushed. And here you can see a couple of photographs of the wet cleaning facility, and you can see a tapestry laid out on the perforated bed, and underneath is the chamber that collects the water and all of the monitoring equipment, and here you draw off your water samples and monitor what's happening in the wash. This is where the spray, the aerosol, comes through the nozzles and sprays the tapestry. And here you can see 2 of the ladies actually using individual hoses and actually brush washing the tapestry. The results are absolutely fantastic. As you can see, this is partway through cleaning the reverse of one of the main fields, and the results are very impressive. So here we have a section of one of the tapestries as it hung on the wall before taking down, and a section after conservation and after wet cleaning, with some of the water samples that have been drawn off during the process. I should say that the National Trust now routinely uses this means of cleaning its tapestries, and the success of the collaboration with De Witt is part of this project's legacy. But removed during conservation, the best of Hardwick shields were originally treated with caution due to their unknown stability, particularly of the painted surfaces. Unpainted surfaces were vacuumed with a microvac cleaner and cleaned with a dry cleaning sponge. Painted areas were lightly cleaned with a cotton swab, barely dampened with pure deionized water, which lifted some of the soiling. The paint layers were then consolidated with Lascaux Medium 2 matte with good results. But as the project progressed and the paint responded well to the aerosol suction cleaning at De Witt, the paint on the stags painted directly onto the tapestries, the wet cleaning of the shields was successfully trialled on the National Trust Studios suction table. Using a mild conservation detergent and light sponging, good results were obtained. So the Gideon set has a history of reusing pieces kept from elsewhere within the set to patch and make repairs. The tapestry patches of an appropriate size and colour and not causing distortion were recorded and retained. The exception to this has been in the main figures, where areas were rewarped and the design reinstated, with space stitching called brick couching, as I have already described. The tapestry patches are removed in other areas if they are too small or if they're causing distortion, and these areas were filled with a plain dyed fabric patch. So using careful photography, we've been able to place some of these patches together to digitally recreate some of the missing borders within the set. And this is one of those borders. It's actually half of a border. And it may be that we find some more patches as we work through some of the other tapestries hanging on the walls of Hardwick Hall. Conservation to this point was the work of two studios, Danielle Bosworth and the National Trust Textile Conservation Studio. Between 2014 and 2023, the three largest tapestries were conserved by the National Trust Textile Studio, and as the size of the tapestries increased, so did the conservation challenges, and methodologies were adapted to handle them. So safer methods of installation and deinstallation were adopted to comply with health and safety. The Gideon Tapestries weigh 1.7 kilograms per metre square, the largest in the set being 6 metres in height by 9 metres in width, therefore weighing 80 kilograms, plus the weight of the roller. Mobile scaffolds were used for the smaller tapestries, as you can see on the left, but it was decided that a fixed scaffolding would be needed, as this method worked well, allowing the considerable weight to be safely raised and lowered, and because there was no risk of destabilization and no need to move the scaffolding as well. So the need to level the uneven long gallery floor was identified early on, and a wooden track was created to move a bespoke trolley holding a vertical drain pipe onto which the tapestry is carefully rolled. The roller used is a 16 centimetre diameter soil pipe onto which a length of sticky hook Velcro is applied. This attaches to a length of loop Velcro, which is pinned to the reverse edge of the tapestry. An additional turning handle was attached to the top of the roller and a loop for final lowering to assist with these vast tapestries. The lower borders of the tapestries must be detached before removing the rest of the tapestry, as this allows for installation of the track and trolley system. And here you can see, this is Rachel removing a lower border, which is very, very dirty, but also the fleur-de-lis band is also becoming detached because of the weakness of the stitches. But to do this in reverse, after conservation, as you're seeing on the right-hand side, the lining methodology has to be reversed. So you need to line the border separately and then reunite it with the rest of the tapestry. And to do this, we actually used a concealed Velcro strip, which can just about be seen here, which allows you to fix this part onto the main field, and then the two were subsequently stitched together, as you can see in the centre. So the use of double-sided hook and Velcro tabs has also been adopted to prevent the weight of the tapestry spiralling down the roller. Tabs are pinned evenly along the top edge, and a row of adhesive hooked Velcro is attached to the top of the roller. And as the tabs are double-sided, you're able to layer them on top of each other as you either remove from the wall or rehang the tapestry. So it's also been crucial for us to adapt our methodologies within the studio. The stitch treatment and an application of the linen scrim has been completed in 2 stages. So worked from one side to the middle point, the linen scrim was then cut and the tapestry re-rolled and reframed before starting at the opposite end and working to the middle again. And some lovely pictures of the reverse colours here as we're doing that. In some cases, because of the width of the tapestry and actually so reaching your arm around it as you're working on the frame, we've used a thin scaffold pole. Replacing our tapestry roller with a thin scaffold pole has reduced the circumference and allowed the conservator to work more comfortably. Velcro was the chosen hanging mechanism because it is versatile and it allows the hang to be easily adjusted. Throughout the project, its placement has been constantly reviewed, and initially we placed 2 rows of 5 centimetre Velcro mounted on scoured webbing tape at the top of the tapestry. But however, as the project sort of went along and the tapestries increased in size, it was decided to increase support by stitching Velcro at the top of the main field as well and placing an extra batten on the wall to accommodate this. And so the largest tapestries actually have 2 widths of Velcro in each location. And you can see Rachel and I measuring for that location here on the vast table in the studio. So stitching this in position, actually, I should say, is quite a feat in itself, and we've adopted various methods of doing this over the years. And here we have a conservator working underneath and a conservator working on top, passing the needle backwards and forwards through the Velcro strip to attach it in that very awkward position at the top of the main field. Otherwise, it's reaching your arms around a roller, which is quite uncomfortable. So here you can see a tapestry prepared for installation with a fabric strip at this point covering that middle Velcro. And once on the wall an adjustment has been made, we're able to cut the tacking stitches holding that strip in place and use the pulleys to pull it away so that it could be attached to the middle batten on the wall. So just to say that the methodologies described here have allowed a consistent approach across the whole set, especially at a time when 2 studios were working in tandem, while the adaptive methodologies came together as a result of the experience of studio conservators. So I will now pass to Rachel, who's going to talk about the stitched conservation of the final Gideon tapestry and also talk about the legacy of the project.
Thank you, Elaine. Hello, I'm Rachel, and as Elaine said, I'm going to talk specifically about the conservation of the last tapestry, which is Gideon entering the Midianites' camp as a spy. Right. So after having fine-tuned the conservation process with the first 12 tapestries over 2 decades, the last one threw us a bit of a curveball. So you can see in this slide, this is before conservation, and it had been heavily restored in the past. There's a lot of reweaving here in this horse. We know, but the rest of the set had been relatively free of these reweavings. We know this tapestry was watched by Duchess Evelyn, who was the last owner of Hardwick Hall to live there, but it's unclear when the repairs were carried out. We can say with some certainty that they were done at different times and in different ways. Some tightly rewoven areas are possibly done by professional restorers. On the other hand, the more open needle weaving repairs would most probably have been done by an amateur in-house needlewomen. Some of them are quite crudely executed. Overall, most of the repairs were done quite inexpertly, losing quite a lot of the design detail and sometimes even changing the image altogether. So while documenting and surface cleaning the tapestry at the start of the conservation process, we recorded all the different repairs and interventions and thinking how we'd like to treat each one. So as Elaine said, that quite a few of the tapestries have got patches from other tapestries used to repair them. We'd found this throughout the set, and we'd worked out a methodology how to deal with them. So whereas if the patches were large enough and in appropriate colour and not causing any distortion, we kept them. But where they were important figures, and especially where they were disfiguring, we did remove them. I mean, having a lot of experience with tapestries, we know where the weakest areas are. So that's generally in the cream silk and black wool, and the black wool outlines which occur in the Gideon set. The silk is an inherently weak fibre, and when the wool is dyed dark brown, the fibres disintegrate more readily because of the iron mordants that we use to fix the dye. So these are some areas that have been repaired in the past. Loss of dark brown outlines had resulted, in areas being rewoven, and they faded to a sort of gingery colours, sort of over here. And large silk areas on this man's shoulder. They're where the light is supposed to be much more subtle than this. The reweaving is just very monochromatic and quite flat, and you don't have that nuance of shading. These are some more examples of the historic repairs. So you've got examples of weak silk replaced with quite solid blocks of rewoven silk. And in many areas, the design detail's been lost. So you can see it's quite crudely done here on this horse's leg, and there's some strange colours going on there. And some of them were structurally problematic, quite weak, like this area down here. And then others, like in this praying figure of Gideon, they're quite, they're quite thick, crude reweaving of the brown outlines. So together with the property staff and curators, we viewed the whole tapestry overall to decide how we were going to treat the different areas and what our objectives were. The most important thing is to make it structurally strong enough to hang for at least another 100 years. But it's also important that this tapestry sits cohesively with the work on this tapestry sits cohesively with the rest of the set. But lastly, we also wanted to allow this tapestry to tell its part of the care and repair story. So we considered different techniques to try and achieve these objectives. So this is where you can use paint in a very controlled way to blend in some of the historic reweaves. We're only putting this on the rewoven areas. However, we found that you needed to use quite a few layers of paint to make a colour difference, and it just ended up making it look very flat and dull. So they were still quite solid. So in the end, we actually decided to take them out because this is the skirt on the main figure of Gideon. So we felt that it was worth putting the time and effort into this particular figure. So we removed them, and we replaced the reweaves with our usual brick couching. So this is where we've taken the reweaves out, and these are our stitches. Done in stranded cotton, and we were really happy with this result because we could recreate the original image while making it quite obvious that it was a new edition, and also it sits much better. You haven't got these blocks of bright yellow reweaving. However, it is a very time-consuming process. So sometimes if you want to remove a previous repair like this one here, when you take it out, the warps are missing. So we need to insert new warps to replace them. And then we do our brick couching in this area using the design, that was, that you can see the remnants of, you can judge what colour would have been there. So, right. I mean, it would be impossible and uneconomic to remove all the previous repairs. So you can see these areas down here have been rewoven. And we also, we don't want to lose this part of the tapestry's history. So we therefore trialled integrating repairs that were structurally sound but aesthetically disruptive. So we did our brick couching through the rewoven areas. So in this area here, we've put the darker brown through. It took several attempts to find the best way of getting enough visual impact as our stitches sink into the quite loosely woven reweaves quite easily. And we found we had to exaggerate the colour and use an extra strand of wool when we were working in these areas. We also used this area to mimic the hatching. That's a weaving technique to just break up these solid areas of colour. So we've been able to put some, breakups put in to break up these big solid areas of reweaving. So as we mentioned before, we had a methodology for the patches that we'd used on earlier tapestries. So these are sort of patches from random tapestries. So these figures in the background, we actually kept the patches in place, but just strengthened them in areas where they were weak and blended in. You can see in this bit around his sleeve. But they're, minor figures, so we've just left them there. On the other hand, when they were in more central figures, so this patch here and here, we've removed those and done the brick couching, and also where it's obvious what you could replace it with. So we've filled in this area and then this area on this sleeve here. And this is one where a lot of these reweaves here that had faded to a gingery colour, they were taken out and brick couched in. So I'll just go through. We've got a few more slides. So this was the skirt of Gideon that we've taken all these reweaves out and replaced it with brick couching, which is much more subtle and you can see what's been replaced. This is the figure of Gideon, and we've taken out these quite crude outlines and just stitched them more subtly in place. The same here, we've broken up these solid areas of reweaving by just putting some brick couching through it, and it just blends it all in with the original. And again, we've used the brick couching. This is an area where, the brown wools in this dark horse have faded and degraded much worse than on the lighter brown. We've just used the brick couching to redefine him. So I just wanted to, Elaine and I both want to acknowledge that we're not the only people who can chart our careers through the Gideon Tapestries. There's been a lot of training of students, interns and textile conservators. The extensive duration of this project and the relatively coarse weave of these tapestries have made them an invaluable tool for training conservators. So throughout the project, over 30 conservators have contributed to the conservation of the set, ranging from interns just beginning to learn their craft through to experienced textile conservators just seeking to enhance their tapestry conservation skills. So given the very specialised nature of tapestry conservation, which isn't typically taught by a lot of the conservation courses at university, hands-on experience is crucial. With each tapestry taking 2 or 3 years to complete, it's impossible to fully grasp this skill without a long-term commitment of time. People have been able to come to the studio and work with us. Managing the project has also been a significant and rewarding undertaking. It's allowed us to develop the team and facilitate skill transfer within the studio. So effective project management's enabled one team to pass their skills on to the next, along with advice and support. We've been fortunate to experience minimal changes within the studio. I've been here for over 30 years, allowing for seamless knowledge transfer. And I've witnessed firsthand the growth and development of many talented individuals who've worked on these tapestries, and many of them still working at the studio. So it's incredibly rewarding to see people's confidence flourish, and to know that the Gideons have played a significant role in their professional journeys. This is a meeting at the studio, client meetings. So they've been a priority in the studio for the last 24 years, with consistent funding commitment from everyone, both locally and regionally. The project often takes over the entire room when laying it out and lining it. Even during COVID, despite cancelling Christmas, we were able to form a bubble and take down one of the next tapestries to keep the studio operational. And we prioritised taking down the next tapestry before completing one that was in the studio to maintain the momentum. So even the simplest tasks can't be overlooked because of the scale of these tapestries. When we're transporting the tapestries to the conservation studio and to Belgium, to De Witt, to be wet cleaned, the art handlers that we use need to make sure they bring a lorry that's big enough for the 6-metre drain pipe they're rolled on, which is quite challenging, and especially navigating the very narrow streets of Mechlin where De Witt is housed. So fundraising, the total cost of conserving all 13 tapestries has amounted to £1.7 million over the project's lifetime. This is a substantial sum of money, and our hourly rates increased from £29 to £45 during this period, which has had an effect on it. In Danielle's original estimate and survey, she suggested that completing the stitching for all 13 tapestries would require over 46,000 hours, which actually turned out to be pretty close. I don't know the exact final, but it was definitely in that area. And this highlights the importance of considering the whole set rather than each tapestry individually. So fundraising played a crucial role. And you can see the evolution of donations over this time. We had a fundraising leaflet, then to donor labels that were stitched onto the back of the tapestries. And now we've got contactless donations. So collaborating with trust-wide curatorial, fundraising and finance colleagues, we have managed to attract generous support from many funders, including the David Webster Charitable Trust, the Wolfson Foundation, the Royal Oak Foundation, the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and individual donors as well. And their support has been, we couldn't have preserved these tapestries without that help. Publicity. So the needs to balance funds and main interest over all these years has been challenging, and we've tried to address this through publications, and we worked with the National Trust's communications team. And we've also had the introduction of social media, and the amount of publicity that we received for the final rehang was outstanding. It included, coverage in the national press, actually morning time television, Elaine appeared on it, professional magazines, and lots more social media engagement. Another way of maintaining interest is through talks and tours of the studio, including Heritage Open Day, when we open our doors, when the studio opens the doors to the general public. Actually, this is the team from Hardwick coming for a studio visit when we're halfway through conserving one of the Gideons. So that was really nice. They could come and see it being worked on in the studio. And we also have, you know, lots of legacy and donor events at the property and in the studio. So it's, yes, as I said before, they, you know, they do require everybody. They take over the entire studio, and it's definitely all hands on deck when it comes to reconstructing and lining them. But yes, they definitely take over the whole studio. So we are very proud that our efforts have been recognised both within the National Trust and externally. And last year we got 2 prestigious awards. We were highly commended for the Museums and Heritage Award. And then, yes, we were really proud to be winners of the EUROPA Nostra Award. And yeah, they're a testament to the effort and hard work of everybody involved. And it's very rewarding to see our efforts celebrated in this way. So thank you very much. And thank you all for your attention. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rachel and Elaine, for this most fascinating talk and for sharing with us so much of your work and the fineness of what you do. We are extremely appreciative. Would anyone like to ask a question? You can write your question in the chat, or you could ask your question as you want. Just raise your electronic hand if you are willing to speak. Please, I have to make sure I don't miss anyone. As our participants are thinking about their questions, let me ask.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Was there one down there? How was the scrim prepared?
Yes, there are. Okay, fantastic. How was? Let me look at it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. How was the linen screen prepared before use? Obviously,
Yes.
extremely
Yeah, that is, yeah. We
detailed question.
we shrink it. We scour it. We wash it through several rinses of hot water, and then it's hung out to dry and ironed. And then we pull lines in it, so that we know that we're keeping it the grain straight. So we pull lines in it. Actually, Ellie stitches them in, doesn't she? Red ones.
Yes, yeah. So when the linen is scoured, actually, in a huge boiler at the studio, the dressing that comes out of the linen it's a really strong colour. It just looks the colour of tea. And I think the most efficient way to do it is to leave it soaking overnight in that boiler of water as it cools, and that really draws out most of the dressings. So there's an awful lot of work involved in just that single aspect of the conservation. And we're really lucky that our studio technician, Ellie, does all of that hard work for us.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then another question, fascinating. Thank you. Did I miss how the vibrancy in colors was reestablished?
Yeah, sadly, there is nothing you can do about that. We can't bring the colours back. They've faded. We know, which is why the tapestries, you know, the light levels in National Trust houses are all controlled with sun blinds. So no, I'm afraid, sadly, there isn't anything we can do to bring those back.
So our conservation stitching, the colours that we're choosing, we're matching the faded colours on the front, and we're sympathetic in our work with, you know, how they look at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you. And another, I mean, everybody's so appreciative of your talk. Thank you for a fascinating talk. In the redisplay of the tapestries, were there any additional measures implemented to control the impact of light?
Yes, yeah, they, I mean, at Hardwick Hall, they have sun blinds. They have curtains and sun blinds at the windows, So yeah, the light levels are controlled in the house when they're back on display.
In fact, there's a calculation also of the number of hours that houses are open to the public as well. When you're looking at the rate of fading, you're looking at how many lux hours that you can use within a year's opening. So, you know, there's an awful lot of calculations go into addressing that issue.
And in fact, the Trust have just got a new project. They're doing something called microfading, where you put a very, very small beam of light onto it. You know, it's tiny, you can't see it. And it will measure one noticeable fade with the naked eye so that you know exactly how much light it would take for something to fade. Because we think of the old faded colours of not fading so readily. So we're just, you know, we're going to reconfirm that by using this microfading. So that will, you know, really be able to quantify how much light we're allowed to expose things to until you get a noticeable difference.
Thank you. And another extremely technical question. What type of detergent did you use for the washes?
Yes, that is very technical. I don't know the name of it. It is the one that they use at DeWitt. I'm pretty sure it's a conservation grade detergent. I think it's an anionic one, I think.
Non-ionic
detergent,
yes.
Don't know the trade name of it though.
No.
I feel we have lots of experts among the participants. When you do small sections of color enhancement to make the images pop, do you do this by instinct or plan it out digitally first? Also, where is your studio?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Well, we're in Norfolk, in North Norfolk, and there are two conservation studios in the National Trust. So we're specialising in textiles. There's also a conservation studio at Knoll and Sevenoaks that is specialising in more general conservation. So we're planning digitally first when we're enhancing areas. I think the most important thing is when we're working on a tapestry on a conservation frame in front of you, you're looking at a very small area, and we're always conscious of that. So we're always looking at the bigger picture, going back to the main image and trying to work out, you know, what we're doing with the tapestry and how that impacts on that bigger image. And I think more and more we're probably going to be looking at digital means of trying to establish if you've got parts of design that are absent, for instance, you might be using digital techniques more often.
We often stand on a ladder and squint at things as well, because you've got to get a good view from, you know, where it's going to be viewed from.
Yes, I mean, sometimes you have a gift where if you're working on a tapestry that has a border that's repeated across a set, for instance, you're able to look at other borders within the set that has that very same part of image that, you know, you're able to look at to help you with elements of design. But sometimes it can be really tricky if it's within a main field and it's a one-off, really. You can go back to the original cartoon if that's available, the historic cartoon. You can also go have a look for tapestries that were also woven using that cartoon that are, you know, held by other institutions. So there's a whole load of research to be done sometimes.
Oh, thank you. And now I will go to even more technical question. If you happen to remember which company that you use for the analysis of color of the weft samples?
Oh, for the dye analysis, yes, yeah, we used at this time the KIC Conservation Laboratory in Brussels. But there are other places offering dye analysis as well. So that's just one of those.
And there are many things also there. But can I ask you a question as well?
Yes.
You told us, I think we've learned a lot about Gideon Tapestries, but we also learned from you in the very beginning that this was not the only project you worked on during this 24 years. And I wonder for each of you, what might be your very favorite project that you have done in your career? It doesn't have to be Gideon Tapestries.
Well, I can think of one that I really enjoyed working on. That's also from Hardwick Hall. And they have these appliques. They're called the Noble Women. And they were commissioned by Bess of Hardwick, and they depict noble women from history and mythology, flanked by their personifications of their virtues. And yeah, I really enjoyed working on those. What about you?
Well, more recently, I had the joy of working on a prayer book and Bible that had an embroidered cover. And the embroidery is so beautiful. It depicted King David on one side and Hester on the other from the Old Testament, dated from the 1630s. And well, actually, I was filmed working on that project for the hidden treasure. Am I allowed to say?
You are, yes, I'm sure you are. You plug
on the
your
BBC
TV career.
Yes, yeah. So part of their Hidden Treasures series, and it was just recently aired on BBC Two.
Yeah.
One wouldn't think that your type of profession, being kind of hidden in the studio and spending hours conserving those tapestries, that's a career for being an influencer and media star, and obviously very successful in managing. I will have one more question following on what you actually said on women. We've seen on all your photos, we've seen only women.
Yeah.
Are there men involved in conservation tapestries, or is this a very female-dominated profession?
It's quite female-dominated. I have worked with some men, not very many, but no. I mean, it's not exclusively, but predominantly. We're definitely open to, anyone can come, as long as they can sew.
Thank you so very much. And there are just plentiful of gratitude and thanks on the chat, and I'm not going to read it all, but you can see it yourself. It was an absolutely excellent seminar and a great pleasure to have you with us. I know you have at least 2 projects you would be happy to talk to us again about, and we may come back. We may come back to ask you to talk to us about your favorite projects. Thank you very, very much. Let me draw attention of everyone to the fact that the talk has been about a project submitted to and awarded within the European Heritage Award. And many of you represent cultural heritage organizations here, one of our participants. So please consider submitting the project perhaps in the next round. It is a prestigious honor. I think both Rachel and Elaine will agree, given that a beautiful ceremony and a prestigious award jointly led by EUROPA NOSTRA and European Union, European Commission. A submission deadline for European Heritage Awards, EUROPA NOSTRA Award 2006 is 9 September. So you still have some time to prepare your project. Our next webinar will be on 17th July, and this will be about Budapest 100 project. Very different. Barbara Sheeb will share how Budapest 100 strengthens urban communities, raises awareness of heritage and current environmental issues. And I hope you will be able to join us again. And until then, please consider joining EUROPA NOSTRA and stay well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.